Boy, did Spurs need that performance and result, especially at home. That was a real statement win. And I want to caveat, obviously, the opposition wasn't great, but there was so much to like about the performance in terms of principles and in terms of tactical tweaks and flexibility that I really want to get into. But before I do that, please do make sure you're subscribed. Please comment down below as well and like the video and share it and all that good stuff. I think I've been big on the fact that Spurs' main issues at the moment are coming from how rigid and straight line their passes are. The shape we kind of tend to see with Spurs' problems is something like this, and everyone is on the same line constantly. It's so rigid. The only real angled, kind of staggered passes are these ones, the centre back to the fullback. Apart from that, when we get here, it's very straight. It's very straight, and this just makes it so easy to press because if you have someone on the same line, let's say like this, that is an easy interception. Same line, you're always gonna be able to defend that. It's so simple. And it doesn't facilitate progression because same again, if you play to the winger, straight line, he's got his back to play. What's he meant to do with that? Probably most likely pop it back if he can even do that because the pressure will be massive. But when you kind of stagger these players in terms of like this 3-2 build-up shape, which we've seen, it allows this angled pass. And now that becomes much more difficult to press because if you kind of try to go there, you're on the blind side, you can easily move. And I think it's so much less about this kind of strict 3-2 shape. It's more about just giving players fluidity and freedom to move off their kind of marker. Because if you see something like this, Bentancur can come here, he's open there. If he doesn't press, if he stays here, then that is open there and he's got much more time on the ball. The kind of angles are so important in terms of these build-up shapes. And I also think the other thing is that Porro dropping deeper and more reserved is dragging one of their players towards him. So let's say the winger goes there to press Porro. Now there's this big space here for us to help progress it. Bentancur can maybe come in here and receive, and now he's got lots of time. Or you allow kind of Johnson to drop in there, that pulls him here. Maybe Kolo Muani goes into that space. So Porro is kind of dragging players towards him to allow us to then exploit the press there. So there's so many different reasons why I think this Porro kind of new position, I guess, we've seen it early in pre-season, but we haven't seen it much this season, has been so big for us. I think that's just a kind of no-brainer now that Porro needs to kind of play that role. So I think that was massive in what was so good about yesterday's performance against Copenhagen. But I think there's no way we could talk about the kind of positives of Spurs last night without talking about these four. Now, I've been so big on talking about dynamics and kind of getting players who are good technically close together and giving them freedom to express themselves. And I think these four did it so well last night. Four very intelligent, very technical players who were just free to move around. They were constantly rotating. Odobert was dropping in here sometimes. Kolo Muani was dropping in here. At times you saw Odobert go beyond, Simons go beyond. It was just really nice to see them be so free and letting good players work it out. I think sometimes we overcomplicate the kind of tactical shapes, the tactical patterns. But if you get good technical players close together and facilitate them receiving the ball in advanced areas, you're going to have success. And I think we saw that massively in the first half. I think the relationship between Odobert and Udogie summed this up massively because at times we saw Odobert come narrow and Udogie go up the flank. Which kind of was probably more expected. But I think one thing that I really noticed is Odobert at times was keeping the width and Udogie was coming in here. And this just keeps opposition guessing. It's so fluid, it's so free, it's really hard to track because you don't know which line they're going to be on. It pulls players apart, pulls the man-to-man press apart. It's just really nice to see them kind of using their initiative and their tactical ability and intelligence to be free and receive the ball where they need to. So I think that was massive. We saw a much freer Xavi Simons as well. And I think obviously a lot of this was just the amount of times he was touching the ball. The ball progression is obviously better because of this 3-2 build-up shape that I mentioned. Bentancur, who I'll come on to, was excellent. But Simons was just touching the ball more and he looked free. And I think I've said so many times now that I think Simons is not a open spaces player, or at least in his worst state, in his least confident state, he's struggling in those big spaces. But I think if you can get players around him and get lots of touches, you're going to see the best out of Simons. And I do think he's better than what we've seen in open spaces, in kind of large spaces, because while he doesn't have the athleticism and the power, he's good at buying fouls. So he's good at getting his body in the way. We've seen it a couple of times, but I think the lack of confidence hasn't really helped him there. But one thing you can't second guess about him is if you get players around him, he is going to ball. He is going to ball and he's going to love it. I think with Johnson really keeping this width, with Porro playing more narrow, it allowed Simons to kind of drop into this channel at times, this right channel. We saw this for the goal where Johnson ran in behind, Simons played a lovely kind of curled pass because there's that open space there, and we have Odobert kind of filling in that space and Udogie kind of running up that flank left and right. So that was massive for us. I just really liked just getting players close, good players, get them close together, let them be free. It's so simple, but it's so effective. So I think that is massive. I want to touch on Bentancur as well, because I think obviously he was excellent. I think first of all, out of possession, I don't really ever question Bentancur out of possession. I think he's really good at anticipating. I've always said that if you allow him to be nice and aggressive, step up and not let him worry about what's behind him. Obviously, you've got Porro there more narrow, who's going to kind of protect that space a bit more. So you're allowing him to kind of step up and be aggressive and anticipate. And that's where I think he's really good defensively. So he was hoovering up a lot of that. But I also think in terms of ball progression, albeit opposition not great, but he wasn't hiding last night. He was getting the ball off Porro a lot, getting the ball off Romero a lot, and driving through the centre. A few progressive passes as well, which were nice. But just so much more confident. I think this kind of staggered shape really benefited him. The angles were just so much more favourable. And yeah, I think Bentancur was excellent last night. Johnson, lovely goal, but I still have my issues with him out of possession. I think that red card kind of sums up what he's like out of possession. I think he dives in so early because he can't be bothered to lock in and really stick with his task. And that's often what he does in terms of he might not foul, but he'll dive in, turn his back, and then that's his job done because at least he tried. But I think the best out of possession players, they don't dive in. They're strong. They're strong-willed. They'll stay with it. If you look at Jed Spence defend, he locks in. And although he's aggressive, he doesn't dive in because he knows that you have to stick with your task until the right moment. And Johnson obviously doesn't do that, but I don't want to be too negative on a night where we won 4-0. Kolo Muani, I think if you know football, you can see there's a top player there. I mean, I know he missed big chances last night, but the amount of times he could control a ball that Richarlison wouldn't dream of controlling back to goal, but also able to run channels. He's a really well-rounded striker, which is why I was so big on him when he signed. I think the goals are going to come with him. I think the movement's great. The link-up play is excellent. I think if you just see what he did for that second goal, the composure to bring that down and then lay it off to Odobert is just excellent. Odobert's performance will go really underrated as well, but just a really intelligent footballer, man. Again, similar to Simons, if you get him around players, Udogie going around him, you're going to see great things because he's so good at combining. He's good off both feet in terms of both dribbling and passing. Another kind of promising performance for him. We forget he's only 20. There's so much development to come for him. But yeah, back to Kolo Muani, I think the signs are there, man. I think he has to be starting now. And I think this dynamic in general, this is something we must lean on because football is about dynamics sometimes. It's about relationships. And these four obviously looked so comfortable playing together because they have high level of intelligence and high level of technical ability. And that is going to be threatening for teams. Whatever way you play them, get these four players close together, rotating into play and stuff like that, you're gonna get success. So I think that is something we now have to lean on, those four. The last thing I want to touch on is the two centre-backs. And obviously we know how good they are, but I think it's so important to remember that Romero's ball playing is the best in the team. We saw how many times he broke lines yesterday, sometimes even like a bigger, longer pass than that. But it's so easy for him. And with a lack of passes in this team, we know how good and important Romero's passing ability is. I mean, that was brilliant to have someone of his ability back. We always know that. He obviously got his assist as well. I think he was jealous of this man who, oh my God, that goal was absolutely insane. And this is something I've been so big on with Van de Ven. He needs to lean into that more. He could do a run like that every single game and not necessarily ending up with a goal, but he could take out 3, 4 players every single game with his carries. And I think if we need to see more of that because it's such a cheat code in terms of progression. Like, yeah, cool, we can have all these kind of shapes and whatever, but if you have a physical beast like that who's that athletic to just run through players, use it more. And if you have his ball playing and his ball carrying, that is scary in terms of ball progression from your centre backs. So please, can we see more of that? I think the coaching staff need to be big on that. And I think so much of this will be massive as well. If we have Udogie, who's constantly high and wide, you leave this big open space. Udogie probably takes players away with him, and Van de Ven can receive it and use that space to carry. And even if no one presses him, he's inviting players towards him, and then spaces open up for everyone else over here. So I think that carrying, it works so well with this shape, and I think that's why this 3-2 shape excites me, because it suits all of our players. You get Romero in more central areas where he can break lines both left and right. You get Porro's deep passing ability, where if players come and press him, you get him to play these line breaking passes as well. You obviously help your midfielders receive on better circumstances, and then you've got Van de Ven's carrying, really nice. You've got Odobert tucking into a 10 position, which I think suits his combination play. You've got players closer to Simons, which is obviously ideal for a player like him. Udogie, obviously, we know can do the up and down stuff. And then obviously we have Kudus here normally, who can run a whole flank by his own, on his own, sorry. His 1v1 threat's massive. He doesn't need the same kind of support around him that Simons does. So you get big open space for him to work with. I think this system just suits us so well in terms of personnel, but also improving the things that have been wrong. And so hopefully Thomas Frank can continue to lean on this and we see massive improvements. United on Saturday, obviously. I'm going to get a preview out maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. So keep an eye out for that. Put your notification bell on, because I'm going to get a United fan on to speak on their tactics and see how the game's going to sort of unfold. But yeah, man, I think signs are really positive from that game. Hopefully we don't now go and abandon it. To be honest, I would go unchanged barring Kudus, Beckham and Johnson if he's fit. But yeah, man, really positive signs. Let's keep this momentum up, please. Albeit the opposition wasn't great, but the signs are really nice there. Please make sure you're subscribed, guys, and come on, you Spurs.